Good evening and welcome back to the Gregory Wright Show. I am Gregory Wright and I am glad to host all of the people who stumbled across my channel, all the people who are repeat offenders of every time when a video comes out, you click on it, you listen to it all the way through because this is how we are going to break through the YouTube algorithm. No matter what social media platform it is, if you show support, one of the things that you can do is you can like, share, and subscribe. It's all free with the flick of a wrist and a click of a button. You know they tried to kill this man, right? You know they tried to kill this man, right? Number 47. And so Butler, Pennsylvania, they took several shots at him, grazed his ear. There was another incident that took place next to the place he was staying. I think it was Mar-a-Lago or maybe another golf course in Florida or somewhere else. Maybe New Jersey, I believe. But this smear campaign is never ending. For the past 10 or 11 years, it's been Russia, Russia, Russia hoax. It's been impeachment number one, impeachment number two. It's been demonizing and dehumanizing President Donald Trump in the eyes, hearts, and minds of the American people. And I believe that when you dehumanize somebody, you reduce them to an object, and an object that is worth abuse, that is worth even killing. And so we need to be careful about our hearts and minds, and we need to protect ourselves from these demons that want to distract us from focusing on what's more important, and it is humanity. We have to treat others the way we would like to be treated. Okay? I hate to sound cliche about it, but that's the doggone truth. But tonight I am going to read to you from www.whitehouse.gov/J6. I want my viewers to understand that the narrative that you've been fed since 2021 is one sided, and you will hear the other side tonight. I love this image. Whoever created this page deserves a raise real quick. Okay? These are the committee members right here. I can't name every one of them, but I know she's Liz Cheney. This dude right here is Adam Kessinger, and I am not going to embarrass myself to go on about that. So I'm gonna read word for word what's going on here, and I just hope that my viewers enjoy this. And I've provided the link below, so just in case you click off early, you won't feel bad because you have all the information at your fingertips because I supplied the link to this website that has the information that I'm about to read off to you. So, President Trump took decisive action to pardon January 6 defendants who were unfairly targeted, overcharged, and used as political examples. They were not protected by the leaders who failed them. They were punished to cover incompetence. On his first day back in office, January 20th, 2025, President Trump issued sweeping blanket pardons and commutations for nearly 1,600 patriotic Americans prosecuted for their presence at the Capitol. Many mere trespassers or peaceful protesters treated as insurrectionists by a weaponized Biden DOJ. He fully pardoned most commuted sentences and ordered immediate release of those still in prison, ending years of harsh solitary confinement, denied due process, and family separation for exercising their First Amendment rights. Since January 6, 2021, Nancy Pelosi spent over 3 years and nearly $20 million in taxpayer funds on her partisan select committee, producing a scripted TV spectacle to fabricate an insurrection narrative and pin all blame on President Trump. Video and audio recordings, including unaired HBO footage from her own daughter, show Nancy Pelosi repeatedly acknowledging responsibility for the catastrophic security failures, admitting we have totally failed and I take full responsibility for not having the National Guard pre deployed despite intelligence warnings and President Trump's offers of troops that were ignored under her leadership as Speaker of the House. The Democrats masterfully reversed reality after January 6th, branding peaceful, patriotic protesters as insurrectionists and framing the event as a violent coup attempt or orchestrated by Trump despite no evidence of armed rebellion or intent to overthrow the government. In truth, it was the Democrats who staged the real insurrection by certifying a fraud ridden election, ignoring widespread irregularities, and weaponizing federal agencies to hunt down dissenters, all while Pelosi's own security lapses invited the chaos they later exploited to seize and consolidate power. This gaslighting narrative allowed them to pursue or persecute innocent Americans, silence opposition, and distract from their own role in undermining democracy. We're going to watch a video now, right?
We have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean the National Guard. Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient
That
resources.
is not a question of how they have been. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
Right? So you heard that. And so we're going to continue on. Here's a timeline. I am going to shrink this down for you so you can kind of see it if you're following along with me. I am going to shrink this down and I am going to try to move myself out of the way. Um, Maybe I'll do this. I'll just disappear. Right? So this is a timeline on whitehouse.gov of what their account happened, right? What, they're based on their research and talking to people and stuff like that. This is the White House's account of what happened on January 6th, right? So pre January 6th, you see the timeline. Pre January 6th, 2021. President Trump invites Americans to D.C. and he says, President Trump invites patriotic Americans to Washington, D.C. on January 6th for a peaceful and historic protest against certifying the stolen 2020 election. He emphasizes standing up for election integrity while calling for peaceful demonstration. Hundreds of thousands respond to the call to show support. Okay, now check this out. President Trump delivers powerful speech. At the ellipse, President Trump speaks to hundreds of thousands of supporters, detailing evidence of election fraud and urging the crowd to march to the Capitol to peacefully and patriotically make their voices heard. He stresses the need to fight for the country through strength and determination, explicitly calling for peaceful protests. The crowd responds with massive enthusiasm. So I'm going through this timeline right here, right? Patriots march to the Capitol. Following the president's speech, the massive crowd peacefully marches down Constitution Avenue to the Capitol to protest the certification of the fraudulent election. The march is orderly and spirited with flags, signs, and chants supporting President Trump. Capitol Police response escalates tensions. Capitol Police aggressively fire tear gas, flashbangs, and rubber munitions into crowds of peaceful protesters, injuring many and deliberately escalating tensions. Video evidence shows officers inexplicably removing barricades, opening Capitol doors, and even waving attendees inside the building, actions that facilitated entry while simultaneously deploying violent force against others. These inconsistent and provocative tactics turned a peaceful demonstration into chaos. President Trump urges calm, right? We're still talking about January 6th. As events unfolded, President Trump repeatedly calls for peace, tweeting support for law enforcement and releasing a video telling supporters, go home in peace, while reiterating love for them and election concerns. He consistently promotes nonviolence despite the attack on attendees and emotions running high. Leaked Pelosi video, which we just saw, reveals security lapses. Leaked footage captured by Nancy Pelosi's daughter shows the speaker in a rage during evacuation, furiously admitting, I take responsibility for the catastrophic failure to pre-position National Guard troops, despite President Trump's prior authorization and offers of 10,000 troops that were rejected. Pelosi repeatedly demands to know why security was so inadequate on her watch, exposing the deliberate refusal to accept offered protection and the ignored or delayed request for reinforcements. Ashley Babbitt murdered in cold blood. Unarmed Air Force veteran and Trump supporter Ashley Babbitt is fatally shot by Capitol Police Lieutenant Michael Burr without warning as she climbs through a broken window towards the speaker's lobby. No weapon was found on her, and she posed no threat. Bird faced no charges. Three other Americans were also killed: Roseanne Boylan, Kevin Greeson, and Benjamin Phillips. Zero law enforcement officers lost their lives. Mike Pence refuses to act, and if he did act, he was well within his power as the Vice President of the United States. Vice President Mike Pence, who had the opportunity to return disputed electoral slates to state legislatures for review and decertification under the United States Constitution, chooses not to exercise that power in an act of cowardice and sabotage. Instead, Pence presides over the certification of contested electors, undermining President Trump's efforts to address documented fraud and ending any chance to correct the election steal. An election certified, right? Now, this is 8 p.m. to 3:40 a.m. on January 6th. After law enforcement clears the Capitol, Congress reconvenes late that night and certified Joe Biden's electoral votes. Votes from battleground states marred by massive mail in ballot fraud, hidden suitcases of ballots, exploding water pipes, voting machine irregularities, and unprecedented pandemic era rule changes that bypass state legislatures. 2020 is considered the greatest election theft in U.S. history, with widespread fraud deliberately ignored by courts, officials, and the media, especially mainstream media. Mainstream media is the propaganda arm of the Democratic Party. Moving on, post January 6, 2021, despite his explicit calls for peaceful protests, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and other platforms collude to ban President Trump, citing incitement in a blatant attack of election interference. JP Morgan, Bank of America, Capital One, and other major financial institutions debank President Trump and his family, closing accounts, freezing funds, and denying services in a ruthless campaign of financial persecution to destroy them politically and economically. Legacy media suppresses evidence of fraud. Okay, so just think about you in the grocery store, you're trying to buy groceries and you use your debit card to pay for those groceries and it the card reads decline. You call customer service, they said there's nothing they can do for you because they banked you. And so now you're gonna go hungry and try to figure out how you're gonna get the bank, right? This is the reason why I was talking about the term dehumanization, because when you take a human life and you dehumanize that life, you turn that person into an object to be misused and abused. And this is what's happening, or this is what happened, and it's continuing to happen to President Trump, his wife, and his family, right? They doing all of this. Mass arrest of patriotic protesters. The Biden DOJ launches a coordinated national dragnet, arresting over 1,500 January 6 attendees in pre dawn raids, many for mere trespassing or parading on the Capitol grounds. Hundreds were held as political prisoners for years in harsh conditions, denied speedy trials, and given lengthy sentences in what is considered an unprecedented and diabolical weaponization of federal law enforcement against Trump supporters. At least five J6 defendants took their own life while facing prosecution. Now, think about that, man. I think when a person thinks about ending their life on earth and actually carrying it out, I think that's one of the bravest things that a person does. It's also one of the dumbest things that they can do because they're looking at a long term solution to a short term problem, right? But you gotta have a lot of balls to do that kind of stuff, man. Like not walk around anymore and not be engaged in life anymore. Come on, man. I mean, that's the type of pressure they were under. That's the type of pressure they were under. Speaker January 6th Select Committee exposed, right? Speaker Pelosi's handpicked January 6th Select Committee, stacked with anti-Trump Democrats and two rhinos. Rhinos mean Republican in name only. Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger spent over 3 years and nearly $20 million in taxpayer funds on a propaganda spectacle that demonized President Trump and his supporters. They coached witnesses like Cassidy Hutchinson, leading the calls for perjury and witness tampering investigations against them while withholding exculpatory evidence, deleting encrypted files, and ignoring security failures. Right? We're up here now. Weaponized prosecutions targeting President Trump. Right? Biden prosecutors bring multiple indictments against President Trump over his legal election challenges, including January 6th related federal charges. FBI agents conduct an unprecedented raid on his Mar-a-Lago home, including searching through First Lady Melania Trump's private wardrobe and personal belongings. They target his loyal lawyers, aides, and associates with baseless charges, threatening decades long prison sentences to pressure them into flipping with false testimony against President Trump. FBI entrapment operation exposed. Again, right? Here's the timeline. Subsequent investigations, congressional testimony, DOJ admissions, and whistleblowers confirmed the FBI had at least 26 and likely more, right? Confidential informants and assets embedded in the January 6th crowd in 2021. So this the whitehouse.gov is alleging that FBI agents and God knows whatever agents from other agencies, they claim it was 26, but when they give you a number, just times that by four. It was enough to cause the chaos that January 6, 2021 we experienced during that time, right? Figures like Ray Epps, who was caught on video repeatedly urging people to go into the Capitol, were urged were charged only minimally. Democrats successfully flipped the narrative to brand peaceful protesters as insurrectionists while waging the true insurrection against a legitimate election. Last one on this timeline is warfare fails, President Trump prevails. Despite relentless deep state efforts to imprison, bankrupt, and assassinate him, all designed to sabotage his political comeback through fabricated indictments, invasive raids, and rigged show trials, President Trump emerges triumphant, fueled by unbreakable resolve, the fierce loyalty of his courageous family, team, and patriotic Americans, and God's unmistakable grace. He delivers a landslide in 2024 victory and reclaims the White House in the greatest comeback in American history. So, folks, if you sitting out there and you feeling like you down on your luck, like the ball just doesn't bounce your way, just think about President Trump and what he had to go through. He went through hell, and he still is going through hell because he's reclaimed the presidency, and there is not one news segment that doesn't mention Trump. Now we're down to the bottom of this now. We're only 25 minutes in, so stick with me. Please. President Trump corrected a historic wrong, freeing Americans who were unjustly punished and restoring fairness under the law. Let me get to do this real quick. All right, we're almost done. Let's do this. Make the print a little. All right. With his triumphant return to the White House, President Trump wasted no time righting one of the darkest wrongs in modern American history. On Inauguration Day 2025, he issued sweeping pardons and commutations for the vast majority of J6 defendants, patriotic citizens who had been viciously overcharged, denied due process. Remember that term when it comes to Kilmore Brago Garcia? Denied due process and held as political hostages by a vengeful regime, right? And you can click on when you access the link that's in my description below, you'll be able to click on this and read the proclamation, and it's got about, I don't know, like maybe 20 names on it, more than that maybe. Um, but check it out, right? These Americans, mainly guilty of nothing more than peacefully protesting a disputed election, were finally freed from years of cruel imprisonment, restored to their families, and exonerated. In one bold stroke, Trump ended the nightmare of weaponized justice and delivered long overdue vindication to those betrayed by the very leaders sworn to protect them. Unfortunately, these nine beautiful and courageous souls lost their lives. Four on January 6th itself, and five by their own hand. Means that they outed themselves while enduring merciless persecution for the simple act of peacefully walking through the Capitol to protest a stolen election. And I'm going to take the time to click through every one of these pictures in the spirit of honoring January 6th. Greason, maybe if I hover over the information, I'm going to have to go back and forth. Matthew Perna, right? Lost his life. Benjamin Phillips, right? Lost his life. Mark Ungst, right? Picture's a little blurry. Lost his life. Ashley Babbitt lost a life. What's this dude's name? Norge Meacham, right? Jord, I guess is his nickname. Lost his life. Roseanne Boylan lost her life. Christopher Georgia lost his life. David Hommel lost his life. Right? So we going through all this. U.S. House Interim Report, December 17, 2024, right? The House Administration Subcommittee's interim report released in December 2024 under Chairman Barry Loudermilk exposes critical security failures on January 6, 2021 that were largely due to politicized decisions by Democratic leadership and the Pentagon. It details how Acting Secretary of Defense Miller dismissed President Trump's January 3rd directive to deploy any necessary military assets, including the National Guard, to ensure safety during the demonstrations, viewing it as non binding. Instead, restrictions were imposed over concerns about optics, leading to delays in the Guard's response despite urgent requests from Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund. The report also highlights Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy's intentional delays and deceptive communications to congressional leaders, as evidenced by recovered HBO footage, which contributed to prolonged chaos at the Capitol while exonerating Trump from claims of inciting or planning violence. The report strongly criticizes Nancy Pelosi's Select Committee for its partisan composition, bias, and ethical violations, including coaching witnesses like Cassidy Hutchinson, whose testimony was contradicted by multiple Secret Service agents and White House staff in recovered transcripts. These documents refute Hutchinson's fabricated claims about Trump, such as alleged assaults on agents or agreements with violent chants, and reveal Cheney's unethical direct communication with her, including assistance in changing lawyers to influence testimony. The Select Committee is accused of deleting over 1 terabyte of data, failing to archive interviews as required by House rules, and concealing footage where Pelosi admits responsibility for security lapses, such as not pre deploying National Guard despite intelligence warnings and Trump's offers. Further, the interim report uncovers cover ups and related investigations, including the Department of Defense Inspector General's Florida 2021 review, which omitted exonerating evidence of Trump's safety directives, fabricated timelines, and unfairly blamed DC National Guard leadership without interviewing key witnesses. Right? I'm going to reappear right here. Right? I need to reappear. I need to reappear. I've been going on and on without addressing or interviewing key witnesses. It points to bureaucratic interference and lack of impartiality, with the DoD IG obstructing congressional oversight by denying access to unredacted materials. The report also notes the Select Committee's failure to probe significant elements like the pre assembled gallows on Capitol grounds, which went undetected for 26 hours, and the disposal of evidence, underscoring a focus on tarnishing Trump rather than addressing systemic failures. In its broader implications, the report affirms that the events of January 6th were exacerbated by Democratic led politicization of security and intelligence, while supporting Trump and his supporters by disproving key narratives used against them. It calls for reforms to restore accountability and transparency, highlighting how the Select Committee's predetermined outcome and destruction of evidence have deepened public distrust in Washington institutions. Overall, the findings portray January 6th not as a Trump orchestrated insurrection, but a tragedy enabled by leadership failures under Pelosi's watch. And so we're going to get into how CBS or the BBC uh, tried to deceive the public
on what Trump actually said leading up to January 6th. So here's the original video. I'm going to play it right now.
Media will not show the magnitude of this crowd. Even when I turned on today, I looked and I saw thousands of people here, but you don't see hundreds of thousands of people behind you because they don't want to show that. We have hundreds of thousands of people here, and I just want them to be recognized by the fake news media. Turn your cameras, please, and show what's really happening out here, because these people are not going to take it any longer. They're not going to take it any longer. Go ahead, turn your cameras, please, would you show? They came from all over the world, actually, but they came from all over our country. I just really want to see what they do. I just want to see how they cover it. I've never seen anything like it, but it would be really great if we could be covered fairly by the media. The media is the biggest problem we have as far as I'm concerned, single biggest problem. The fake news and the big tech. Big tech is now coming into their own. We beat them 4 years ago. We surprised them. We took them by surprise. And this year, they rigged an election. They rigged it like they've never rigged an election before. And by the way, last night they didn't do a bad job either, if you notice. I'm honest, and again, I want to thank you. It's just a great honor to have this kind of crowd and to be before you and hundreds of thousands of American patriots who are committed to the honesty of our elections and the integrity of our glorious republic. All of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen by emboldened radical left Democrats, which is what they're doing, and stolen by the fake news media. That's what they've done and what they're doing. We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. Our country has had enough. We will not take it anymore, and that's what this is all about. And to use a favorite term that all of you people really came up with, we will stop the steal. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
I guess that's a clip I should have played, but I thought it was a side by side. I apologize for that. Let's move on. We're almost at the end, folks. We are at the end, right? 3 things that you could do for me that's free is that you can like, share, and subscribe this video so that we can crack the YouTube algorithm to spread this message to more people who would not otherwise come across the material. But because you've done your part as the Gregory Reich Show family, you did your part. And you did those 3 free things. And you spread the word. I want to thank you to my audience. God bless you. And God bless America.